Now, to give you more insight on the matter, we are joined by Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, welcome to the program. I hope you're well. My first question, what do you think motivates Israel to repeatedly target Syrian soil?
Well, it's a land grab. The Greater Israel Project has really been in the hearts and the minds of the Zionists for literally 150 years. This is since the origins of Zionism amongst the secular Jewish population, of course, not the religious Jews, which is the great irony of this. But it was really formulated much more heavily and in a concentrated way back in 1982 in February, when the Oded Yinon plan was published. The idea was, how do we get a Greater Israel? Obviously, right from its inception in 1948, there was land grabs going on, terrorism by the Zionist terror gangs, and the Nabka, the takeover of Palestinian land, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians immediately began, even though, of course, it had been promised that would never happen. And the Yinon plan was all about balkanizing the Middle East. So the idea is you break up borders, you destroy regimes, and the Syrian regime has been gradually destroyed, largely through economic warfare, quite a lot of psychological warfare, obviously things like cyber warfare. These are the methods by which the ability of the Assad government, a democratically elected Assad government, to govern the country have been slowly reduced by CentCom, the United States Central Command, which overlooks the Middle East and considers that it owns and controls the Middle East and West Asia. So that's basically what's been going on since 1982. The Yinon plan was to break up these borders in order that the Crusader state that they've set up after the Second World War, Israel, echoing the Crusades of the medieval times, would be allowed to expand. And of course, the key part of all of that was the horrific assassination of the 5th Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, by the Netanyahu extremist faction back in 1985. There was just about to be a proper peace deal done, but that was never going to be allowed to happen by these extremists, and they assassinated their own prime minister. So you can see that the ire that the Greater Israel bloc, now running Israel, have, as well as their allies in Britain and the United States and elsewhere, they have equal contempt for the people of the Middle East as they do for their own populations in Israel and in Britain and the United States and elsewhere. They see themselves as the sort of privileged leaders of the best people to lead things, and they are not going to subject themselves to the will of their own population. And that's what's been going on here. It's a massive land grab. Of course, places like the Golan Heights, which the Israelis have been occupying for a long time, that seems now to be going to be Israel's, maybe even forever.
That's right. Do you think that Israel is aiming to prevent Syria from forming a new government?
Well, look, there will be a new government, but it will be a bit like, I would suggest something like what's happened in Libya, a chaotic government. And the idea here really is to stop the Syrian people from being able to coalesce around a new resistance to American and British and Israeli influence in the region. But it's, I mean, the most important fact of what's happened over the last week and the fall of the Assad government is the Russians pulling out. So this is absolutely, I think it's shocked many people. Everyone knows the Russians need their naval base in Tartus and on the Mediterranean in order to project power in the Middle East. Then they're losing their influence by losing these naval bases, as they ultimately must, I would imagine, they must do with the loss of support in Syria. And I think Donald Trump was tweeting as well, wasn't he, that the Russians have really kind of had enough of trying to intervene, and they've been very successful. When the Russians came in 2015, what they did is they tipped the balance and they absolutely stopped the overthrow of the Assad government by Western-backed ISIS and NATO-backed ISIS forces. And so it's quite complicated unless you understand who's really backing who, a massive proxy war going on. But I think the ultimate goal of this, and this is where I'd like to gaze into my crystal ball if I'm allowed to, what is the point of balkanizing the Middle East, causing such chaos as Oded Yinon planned back in February 1982, and allowing Israel to expand into this greater Israel, which was first talked about really with the British back in 1922 under the British mandate between the First World War and the Second World War, this greater Israel project. Well, I think the ultimate goal is a kind of Jerusalem-based world government. The idea is that the ideas behind Western capitalism, finance capitalism, where money rules, money controls the media, and money controls political parties. Money can buy up any opposition to the financial elite. They want that kind of world government beginning with Jerusalem. And that's what this battle, I think, is going to be about over the next coming years, and possibly into a third world war, is whether or not the countries of the world can stand up to this attempt to impose a kind of financial slavery and an Orwellian media that will try to program the people to think certain things and have certain perceptions, or whether the people of the world can retain their freedoms.